But I know for sure, that Rock Nation was seeding negative stories about Colin Kaepernick during the time that he was really in traction with Jay-Z. For sure. This is after the Rock Nation NFL deal has been announced.
Jay-Z's Yankee Stadium performance might be the most revealing thing he's done in years, and it shows he's panicking. Right in the middle of his set, he dropped a freestyle addressing the growing criticism that he sold out the black community for his own gain. And instead of just defending himself, he turned around and tried to make it about Colin Kaepernick, claiming Colin's the one people should actually be mad at. But Colin's wife, Nessa Diab, was not having it. She went online almost immediately and made it clear she wasn't going to let that framing sit unanswered. Maybe Jay would have gotten away with this a few years ago, when his word carried enough weight that nobody bothered to fact-check him. Right now, he's completely misread the room. To understand how we got here, you have to go back a few weeks earlier. Jay-Z has been in a bit of a resurgence around the 30th anniversary of his debut album, Reasonable Doubt. After years of staying quiet and not addressing much of anything publicly, he came back to headline the Roots Picnic. He said beforehand that he wouldn't engage in any rap beef, that he was above it at this stage of his career. Then he did exactly that. He took shots at Drake, went in hard on Nicki Minaj, mocking her relationship and her husband in the process, and even called out Tony Busby, the attorney who filed a federal lawsuit accusing Jay and Diddy of sexual assault back in 2000. He rapped about how the accuser could have died before he cleared his name, dismissed the entire lawsuit as one of these silly games, and referred to himself as public enemy number one. The fact that he still brought that lawsuit up years after it was filed and years after he first spoke bitterly about it tells you it still bothers him more than he lets on publicly. That performance left a lot of people confused about what Jay's actual motive was for suddenly breaking his silence. He got his answer clear a few weeks later at Yankee Stadium. During that set, Jay addressed the criticism head-on, specifically the accusation that he's sold out the black community for personal gain. He rapped about being a target you ain't, a clear reference to his Target partnership deal, and pointed out that people criticizing him for that deal are often the same people shopping at Amazon and posting on Instagram and Facebook, platforms owned by Meta and Google. His argument was that everyone is picking and choosing which corporate ties to be outraged about, while he gets singled out. Then he pivoted straight to Colin Kaepernick. Jay claimed Colin took a massive check from the NFL and signed a non-disparagement clause along with it, and that he couldn't even blame him for it because the money was that big. Then he contrasted himself against that. He's never been a sellout. He's got a target on his back precisely because of it, and he's put $500 million back into the community. Numbers, he implied, that Colin simply doesn't have to back up his own image. Here's where Jay completely missed the plot. Nessa has called Jay out before for exactly this pattern. She's pointed out that he supported Colin's activism right up until the NFL handed him a partnership deal of his own. And then he flipped, telling people the moment for kneeling had passed and that Black America should be focused on ownership instead. So when Jay brought Colin's name up again, 7 years later, dragging him into a defense of his own reputation, Nessa wasn't about to let him rewrite that history quietly. She went online and shut it down directly, telling him flat out that the freestyle wasn't it, that people are starting to notice he can't manipulate the room the way he used to, and that paying radio programmers to push a narrative doesn't work on the masses the way it once did. And she wasn't wrong to push back, because the claim itself doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Jay said Colin signed a non-disparagement clause and took hush money to stay quiet about the NFL. That's not what happened. Colin sued the NFL for conspiring to keep him out of the league after his protests during the anthem. Instead of going through a full court battle, the NFL settled, not paid off, settled for a reported figure under $10 million. That's money he was legally owed for being blackballed, not money he took in exchange for silence. And Colin never signed any non-disparagement clause. If Jay wants to argue otherwise, all he has to do is look at how many times Colin has publicly criticized NFL teams since then for refusing to sign him, something someone bound by a gag clause simply couldn't do. That's the part that makes Jay's freestyle feel less like a defense and more like deflection. He needed a villain to point to, and Colin's name was the most convenient one available, even though the facts don't actually support the story he was telling. Because when you actually look at the pattern, it's hard to frame Jay as the one who stayed loyal to the culture while Colin cashed out. Jay currently oversees the Super Bowl halftime performance, a role he reportedly worked to secure while, according to multiple reports, actively helping discredit Colin in the media at the very same time Colin was still frozen out of the league and unable to find work. He turned a blind eye to the families displaced from Fort Greene when the Barclays Center was built, as long as his own check cleared on that development deal. And his Target partnership landed right as people were pushing the company to be held accountable for its own political retreats, undercutting exactly the kind of pressure campaign he now claims to respect in his lyrics. Meanwhile, Colin has kept showing up in ways that don't require a stadium and a microphone to announce. He recently helped fund an independent autopsy for the family in the Jonathan Wells situation, putting resources directly into community accountability efforts without turning it into a headline about his own generosity. None of this is new for Jay either. When people started drawing comparisons between him and Diddy amid the wave of allegations against Diddy, Jay went and did a full GQ interview to get ahead of it, visibly uncomfortable that people would even put the two of them in the same sentence given his own history with lawsuits and allegations over the years. He wanted to control that narrative before it spiraled the way Diddy's did. And for a while, it worked. People largely moved on. The difference now is that the internet isn't pulling punches for him anymore. For years, he's been treated as a protected symbol of Black excellence, someone whose business moves got an automatic pass because of what he was assumed to represent, regardless of who those moves actually benefited. That mask is slipping, and this freestyle is what it looks like when someone realizes the goodwill isn't unconditional anymore, and that a well-produced verse isn't enough to make people forget what they've watched him do over the last decade. Nobody asked Jay for this response. Nobody forced him into a freestyle about Twitter activists and community loyalty and $500 million. He did it because he's clearly paying close attention to every criticism circulating online, and his ego couldn't sit with the fact that people are done accepting the performance of caring instead of the actual track record behind it. And that track record, when you actually total it up, leans toward harm more than help for the community he claims to represent. Ask the families displaced from Fort Greene how much Jay-Z is doing for them these days. This isn't about disliking his music. Plenty of people can enjoy the catalog while still being critical of the politics behind the business decisions. What's worth questioning is how uncritically so many people still defend him, how his brand of capitalist success gets treated as proof of loyalty to the culture instead of what it actually is. A business model that's worked out extremely well for Jay-Z personally, and considerably less well for the people he claims to speak for whenever the criticism gets loud enough. For someone who insists he doesn't care what people say about him, he sure spent 2 performances back-to-back addressing it in detail, down to specific usernames and specific criticisms he claims not to be bothered by. That contradiction is really the whole story here. A man with nothing to prove doesn't need 2 stages and 2 freestyles to explain himself. He does that when the criticism has actually landed, when the applause isn't as automatic as it used to be, and when he can feel the culture starting to ask harder questions about who actually benefits from his version of success. So, here's the real question worth sitting with. Is this a moment Jay can actually walk back from, or has the community simply stopped giving him the benefit of the doubt after years of watching this same pattern repeat? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let me know. Do you think there's still a path for him to repair this, or is the goodwill just gone for good at this point?